My name's Dave DeBow, founder of MoneyPartnerFormula.com, and this show is built for everyday real estate investors who are actively doing deals and looking to scale using other people's money. So if you're an active real estate investor and you want to get featured on this show to talk about your own real estate and capital raising experiences, then just go to daveinterviewsyou.com. Now let's get rolling with this episode, and remember to subscribe for daily interview content. Hey, folks, welcome back. Today, zooming in from Texas, we've got Jason Surat, who is a short-term rental guy who's now getting into multifamily syndications. So we're going to talk with him a little bit about that, the pros, the cons, what appeals, what doesn't appeal, the compare and contrast what he's been doing in the past to what he's doing now. In fact, Jason was just telling me they closed recently on their first 100-unit building. So Jason, welcome to the call and congratulations.
Thanks so much, Dave. Appreciate you having me on. Really looking forward to having a great conversation. So thank
So
you.
Jason, you've got a portfolio of, I believe, single family homes in California that are short-term rentals. Is that correct? And if so, tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, that's correct. And so they're not necessarily single family homes. We try to focus more so on apartments
Okay.
for a number of factors. It keeps us safe with some of the regulations and things like that. The regulations tend to be towards commercial versus residential and the whole zoning process there. Plus, it also really does fit more of the clientele that we serve. And so understanding your avatar, your clientele that you're really looking to serve, you can provide a lot to them just through what we do through apartments.
Cool. So you've got, how many apartment units do you own that you rent out as short-term rentals?
So it's been actually a fluctuation because of the regulations. We've had as many as eight. We've been back down to three, and so now we're back up to five.
So you got 5 apartments that you're renting out as short-term rentals. Tell me so whereabouts are they in California? Are you close to the beach? Where are these properties?
Yes, we're actually in Southern California. I would say borderline of LA and Ventura County, out in that neck of the woods. We've really cornered a segment, or I should say a section that really looks for the travelers that we host or the avatar that I was speaking to earlier. And it just started with one to try to see if it works there and spiraled into where we're at now. We had another portfolio down closer to San Diego, but again, with regulations and stuff, we've had to move around.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that because that's a challenge a lot of people have come up against is
Yeah.
municipalities changing the rules. As soon as you got something running nicely, then they decide to pull the rug out from under you. So that sucks. So tell me a little bit about your experience with that and how are you overcoming that with your existing portfolio right now?
Yeah, so the best way for us is through my mentorships and stuff that sort of taught me as I got into the game is to always have three exit strategies. So when we look at a property, we want to make sure we can execute on any of those three should something like that happen or, inevitably the unplanned pops up. So having those three options in play gives us that opportunity.
What are the 3 options?
So usually when we are looking at a location, this all started when we were looking at residential homes. We want to make sure that we can either, first and foremost, was the short-term rental because we felt like we can get the most cash flow there. Then if something happened there, we want to make sure that it's still going to cash flow if we could do a long-term rental, just your standard, year lease. And then if that didn't happen, we wanted to make sure that we can actually sell the property and get out of it.
Got it. Okay, so if you can't do short-term rental, then flip it over into a traditional long-term rental. If that doesn't make sense, then being able to quickly liquidate is the
Exactly.
goal. Okay, cool. So you kind of went through some learning and transitions and nothing ever stays the same situation. So
Lots of
but
learning.
now you've got the 5 units. These are all apartments
Mhm.
all in a fairly close area. And so is the municipality you're in right now, are they much more short-term friendly? or how are you able to make that work there where it didn't work elsewhere?
Yes, so they're more short-term rental friendly. They're looking to implement some more regulations. So the other part of that is being on top of what's on the horizon, what's on the docket, if you will. So making sure you're in touch with places like the Chamber of Commerce, things of that nature, um, to really understand where they're moving towards. And so this particular municipality is short-term rental friendly, so it allows us to operate without worrying that there's going to be a ban completely.
Okay, very good. Yeah, because that makes making these purchases kind of challenging, right? Because I'm going to imagine, I don't know, I'm going to suspect that these are pretty expensive properties. Even apartments in Southern California ain't cheap. So give me an idea. What's like the value of these apartments these days?
Yeah, I mean, if prices have definitely fluctuated. You can see something in the mid 400s up to the upper 500s. I've even seen something in the 600s. That's probably
For
out of
similar type properties to what you have right now?
yeah, and that's
Yeah,
probably out of what we're the buy box, if you will, of where we want to be.
yeah, most
Again,
definitely.
leaning back on those three ideas of how can we make this work? Can we execute A, B, and if not, then C?
Well, will B even work with any of these properties?
And that's the main thing. I feel like I don't know. I've seen a lot of stories, I guess you could say, is where people will purchase maybe a single family home or something of that nature, and then either the market gets saturated or the ordinance change, and so now they're in a position where they were only planning or plan to short-term rentals, so the other numbers don't make sense. And even
Yeah.
selling, they might have to take a loss. So you want to really be careful about your numbers and make sure that you're kind of working from back to front.
So with the apartments that you currently hold, if it's worth if you paid close to 400,000 for one of these properties, chances are you got a pretty significant mortgage on it. And unless you got it locked in a while ago with the super duper low rates, it would be pretty tough to make those cash flow as a traditional rental, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so lucky for us, we did I guess, acquire ours before the rates went crazy
Nice.
and got higher. So that was something that we were fortunate enough. But even as we look at the newer properties, we're taking into account the rates and stuff like that. And yeah, it's a lot more difficult to make them cash flow with the rates, depending on what you put down. So your down payment and things like
Yeah.
that, any kind of relationships you have there, if you have some sort of investor that can come in and things like that, is a key component to making those numbers work.
All right. So you've got the five properties right now in California. They're chugging along. Things are looking pretty stable. And then you decided to get the heck out of the state and move across to Texas. If you don't mind sharing, what triggered the move, Jason? And when did you guys move?
Yeah, it was, well, we've been in Texas about 10 months now, and it was something that my wife and I had on our radar previous to it actually happening.
Mhm.
But we have a daughter that was entering high school, so out of courtesy, we were going to wait, until she got out of high school, just because we felt like, hey, if we were in that position, we'd
Yeah.
probably not be too happy moving in the middle of high school, right?
Yeah. Especially from Southern California to Texas. I can see a teenager having a challenge with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we were being considerate of that. And then it just came down to us having to make a move for our personal residence. And so when we did that, we were just looking at the prices, the value, things of that nature. And we really just looked at the math and said, man, it's not making any sense mathematically anymore.
A
Um,
lot of people in California came to that same
yeah.
conclusion.
And we
I don't
were
remember the
pretty
numbers,
frugal.
but huge.
Exactly. And we're a pretty frugal lifestyle, so it's not like we were trying to keep up with the Joneses or anything like that. I'm very much the type of person who's going to delay my gratification for, the future and things like that.
Mhm.
And so when we looked at all the numbers, man, we had everything dialed in except for things like taxes, income tax, state regulations
Yeah.
and things that you don't necessarily have total control over. So the next choice, what we like to do is stay in control of our controllables, was to move.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. So you moved from California to Texas. And instead of taking your real estate investing strategy of doing short term rentals, you decided to make the switch into multifamily investing in apartment buildings and getting into syndications. That's a big, big shift. So going from single family, individual apartments to buying the whole kit and caboodle and then doing more traditional long term rentals, night and day. So what triggered that shift besides the move?
It actually had been part of the goal. The idea was to build a short-term rental property to get myself established with some sort of multifamily, whether I started off with something 4 units and under, or maybe, 6 to 10 units, something like that. And then making the jump to Texas, it changed because of the relationships that I had back in California. A lot of them had gone the commercial route, but for me, it was too rich for my blood back then when I was first starting out. And then I simply just picked up the phone when I got to Texas because I knew Texas was a hotbed for multifamily. And so once those guys heard I was in Texas, I was able to plug into what they were already doing. They were super excited because they had no boots on the ground. Plus, we'd had a
So
relationship.
these guys are still in California, is that correct?
Yeah, some of them are California. Some of them have actually moved themselves around. So we got some in the middle of the country, some still in California. And it really comes down to what I call relationship capital, if you will.
Mhm. All right. So you knew these guys previous to the move and they were already all investing in multifamily properties. So you reached out to them and you joined forces. Were they already like, is this a loose group or is this like uh
It
have you guys set
started
up something more formal?
it started out as a loose group, and it technically is a loose group if you were to look at some of the other groups that are already together, and at least through the experience that I've had in this short time that I've been in the space.
Mhm.
So it's still kind of a loose group, but I've known these guys since probably late 2017, 2018. So the relationship was there. And I've watched them grow in what they were doing. And obviously they've seen me grow in what I was doing. And so it really just became a perfect match.
So what is your role within the group? What are you focused on primarily, Jason?
So because I'm boots in the ground, I'll go look at properties. I'll do sort of the on-site inspections, if you will.
Mhm.
Obviously not for anything official, but sort of the first look. So I'll look at things like the condition of the building, the condition of the grounds. I will probably take a tour, maybe do sort of like a secret shopper, if you will, things of that nature to get an idea of how the property looks and is operating as is, to see if there's space to do what we do and bring our system, if you will, to help raise the value of property or something like that.
So you're doing some initial underwriting on the deal as well?
Not yet, and that's
Mhm.
actually something that I'd like to get more experience with, and
So
that's
these
sort of
guys
the
are kind of
next step.
finding it and saying, "Hey, Jason, go check this out. Let's get some
Exactly,
eyes on this thing, see what it really looks like."
exactly.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
obviously you can see pictures, and you get the pitch deck, if you will, from the brokers and
Yeah.
whatnot, and everything's going to look great on paper, but
Yeah,
you would
you're
want
you're
to,
you're comparing
yeah, exactly,
the pitch deck to the reality. So tell me a little bit about the deal and congratulations again, closing, I think you said it's 100 units.
yes.
So walk us through how you were involved in that project.
So that was a great experience. There was so much from doing the initial walkthrough, looking at the grounds, really giving being the eyes and ears for the guys who aren't able to be there and are more astute at looking at, let's say, the underwriting portion, so that they can get a better idea of how everything looks at a whole as a whole. And then from there, once we move forward with an offer, um, then it was all hands on deck. So we had a due diligence day, which was incredible. We had everybody from roofers, foundation, plumbing guys,
So
electricians,
you had to
the
coordinate all
managing.
those inspections.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so it was literally just one day starting from about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, going all the way till 5, 6 o'clock at night. And we actually knocked on all 100 doors to do a walkthrough inspection while all that stuff was going on.
How
So
many? How many of the hundreds? Out of curiosity, how many did you actually get to walk through?
pretty intense. I personally only went inside about a handful of them, maybe 3 to 5 of them.
Mhm.
And I would say of those 3 to 5, 2 or 3 were actually vacant. There was actually only 3 total vacant on the whole property, so it was pretty good occupancy to start with. But yeah, other than that, I stood outside because some people were home, some people were not. Obviously, they were given notice and all that thing. But it was quite the day.
I would imagine. All right, so you coordinated all that. Then what came next?
From there, it was finding out what was found during those inspections, making sure that it's something that we can account for. Obviously, there were some big things that we couldn't really account for, some things that had to be done according to code and things of that nature. So we had to go back to the seller and renegotiate
Yeah,
price and ask for credits and stuff like that.
very, very
Fortunately
cool.
enough, we had a motivated seller, so negotiations went pretty smoothly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, so what are the plans for this property now that you've closed on it? Now that you guys are officially the owners, where are you taking it?
So it's essentially just executing what we do. And essentially, what we do is we like to come in, and the guys that I know have been trained with institutional properties. So they understand sort of that institutional service and management that comes along with A properties, if you will. And so we like to implement that to where we look at is C properties that we'd like to turn to B properties. So it's all
Hmm.
about uh, coming with a much higher level of management. And then from there, it's about renovations, making sure that there's some space in there for us to force some increased value there. And then from there, naturally, rents are going to go up with the renovations. And we want to make sure that the market will be able to handle that. So really, it's a three-prong execution for us. It's management, forced appreciation, increased rents, and then we usually look to exit in your typical 5, sometimes 6 years, depends on.
So you're how what's the time frame for implementing all three of the prongs?
For that particular property, we have about a 5 to 7 year horizon, which is about 2 years longer than I would say you would typically see.
Hmm.
But that's only because we're getting into an area that's just about to start get going, and
Yeah.
it has the meat and potatoes, if you will, the space to get going. And so it's probably about a year or two before it's really going to get to where we can start executing the plan.
Got it. All right, very cool. And right now, how do you guys, how have you structured this project? So are you part of the GP team? You're one of the general partners, and then you've got a bunch of limited partners that you've syndicated the project to, and then you've got operators, or how are you guys structured, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, not at all. So this particular project has your standard GPs and LPs, if you will. The GPs are they're the ones responsible for the operation. We do have
Okay.
separate management on site and everything that's going to be there. And
How many GPs do you have,
we have 3 total in the deal.
including yourself?
So I myself didn't end up being in a GP in the deal for a number of different reasons.
Okay.
My first experience with multifamily in general, so that was one of the learning curves, if you will, that I walked into, and you get to watch a lot of YouTube University, if you will, and there's probably one thing they don't mention on a deal of this magnitude. Now, if you're talking about a smaller magnitude, it might be different, but you need somebody who's essentially a key person or a sponsor for the deal. And so, at least a deal of that magnitude. And so, when it comes to that, there are certain requirements and stuff that you have to meet. So, I'm sort of a GP in training on this particular
Got it.
deal, if you
Well,
will.
that's not bad for your first big one. That's great.
Yeah.
And as we're wrapping things up, Jason, what would you say, comparing and contrasting your experience now with this big deal in the multifamily space versus what you do with short-term rentals in the single space? What do you like more about multi? What do you like less? So just give us kind of a little synopsis of so far what your takeaways have been.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities. I mean, first and foremost, I love learning. I love stretching myself. I love getting out of my comfort zone. So it took a lot of that doing what I was kind of getting into. Obviously, I have the experience of guys who've been doing this for 20 years to lean on. So it's not like I'm flying solo, if you will. So all of that alongside with just providing a quality product. I guess I spent about the better part of 10, 15 years in sales, sort of account managing, customer service, if you will. And it really comes down to providing, controlling the controllables and doing your best to provide a good product for somebody. And I enjoy that. It's the same thing in the short-term rental space. It's a little more intimate, if you will, when you're dealing with, 5 properties versus 100 different units.
Yeah.
So that'll probably be something I have to get used to, where you sort of
Mind
fall
you,
back.
got so much turnaround with the short-term space. Volume-wise, it might be the ssame number of tenants at the end of the day.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah. And so there'll definitely have to be some fallback with understanding that, you can't please everybody, which
Yeah,
actually holds true in the short-term rental space as well.
most definitely. Well, awesome, Jason. Well, thanks very much for sharing your story and what you guys are up to and how you've made this or are in the process of making this transition.
Yeah.
You kind of got feet in both ponds at the moment, so I think that's smart until you really get to get things established there. If people are listening to this and they like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that, Jason?
Yeah, I would say the best way to reach me is on LinkedIn. Social media is a great tool. For me, LinkedIn is really where I find my people, if you will,
Yeah,
sort of that segment of market that I'm looking to speak to. And just my name, Jason Surat. You can find me on LinkedIn. You'll see a good old picture of my face there, and that'll be me.
awesome. Well, Jason, thanks for being on the show. Great to have you.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it.
All right, everybody. See you on the next one. Hey there, I really hope you enjoyed that episode. And as always, if you want to listen to more daily interview content, make sure you subscribe. And if you're an active real estate investor and you're doing deals and you'd like to get featured on this show, then just head over to daveinterviewyou.com. Now, at moneypartnerformula.com, we help real estate investors to create a process for predictably getting capital so they can do more deals without relying on hard money lenders or the banks. We do this by building them a private capital marketing system. Now, if you want help turning yourself into a big money capital attraction machine, then book a call with our team to see how we can help. Just visit moneypartnerformula.com to find out more. All right, take care, and we'll see you on the next interview.